All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive on something that I think we all experience every day, but maybe don't always think about, like how it actually works.
Yeah.
And that is sound waves.
Uh,
You guys sent in some really cool sources for this one, a mix of textbook captors and then some really tricky multiple choice questions too. So
I,
we're excited to dive into this one.
yeah, I'm really fascinated by this kind of stuff, so this should be fun.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
So to kick us off, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the expert speaker for this deep dive on sound waves, and I'm excited to break down some of this information with you all.
Awesome. And I'm the host. And like I said, we're going to be talking about sound waves today.
Right.
So sound waves is something that we experience every day. But, how often do we actually stop to think about how we hear things?
Yeah, you gotta take it for granted.
I know.
It's like magic or something.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Like, how does a tiny little vibration in the air turn into us being able to hear music or the roar of a lion or something?
Well, it all starts with energy.
Yeah.
Sound is really just energy traveling as a wave.
Okay.
And unlike light, which can travel through, the vacuum of space,
Right.
sound waves need a medium to move through.
Gotcha.
They need something to vibrate.
Okay. So that would be like air
Right.
or water or even a solid object.
Exactly.
Okay, those are the mediums that the waves are actually traveling through.
Mm.
And I remember from the source material that sound waves are longitudinal.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Okay, so imagine you have a slinky
Okay.
and you push one end of it. What happens?
Well, it compresses kind of like...
Right. The compression travels
Yeah.
down the slinky,
Yeah.
but the coils themselves aren't moving down the slinky.
They're just vibrating back and forth.
They're just going back and forth,
Yeah.
right in the same direction as the wave.
Gotcha.
And that's what makes it a longitudinal wave.
Okay, so it's like this chain reaction of particles bumping into each other, basically.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
Okay.
And those bumps, those are creating the peaks and valleys of a wave, right?
That's right.
I think the source material called them crests and troughs.
Crests and troughs, yep.
Okay.
And the distance between those crests or troughs is what we call the wavelength.
So wavelength literally means the length of one whole wave.
Yeah, of one complete cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about frequency then? How does that play into all this?
So frequency is all about how often those wave cycles happen.
Okay.
It's the rate of vibration, and it's measured in hertz.
Okay.
And higher frequency means a shorter wavelength,
Okay.
and lower frequency means a longer wavelength.
Okay, so they're like inverse.
Exactly. It's an inverse relationship.
Okay, so if I'm hearing like a really high-pitched sound, like a bird chirping or something,
Right.
that means that sound wave has a high frequency and a short wavelength.
That's right. And then if I'm hearing like a really deep bass sound, that would have a low frequency and a longer wavelength.
Exactly.
Okay, I think I'm getting it.
You got it.
So it's like a dance between the frequency and the wavelength.
It is a dance, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And speaking of making sound waves dance, we should talk about amplitude.
Oh, yes, amplitude.
This is a good one.
This is where we get into the loudness of a sound, right?
That's right.
So the source material said that amplitude is basically how much energy the wave is carrying.
Uh-huh.
And the bigger the wave, the louder the sound.
Right.
But then there was something about like the square of the amplitude. I don't really know what that means.
So this is really interesting.
Okay.
Loudness isn't directly proportional to amplitude.
Okay.
It's proportional to the square of the amplitude.
So what does that mean?
So if you double the amplitude of a wave,
Uh-huh.
it's not twice as loud.
Okay.
It's 4 times as loud.
Oh, okay. So a small change in amplitude
Huge difference.
can make a really big difference.
Exactly.
Okay, so then thinking about how sound travels, I've always wondered, does sound move at the same speed through every medium?
Ah, that's a great question, and the answer is no.
Okay.
The speed of sound depends on what it's traveling through.
Okay.
So here's the rule. Sound travels fastest in solids,
Okay.
then liquids,
Uh-huh.
and slowest in gases.
Okay.
And of course, it can't travel through a vacuum at all.
Right, because there's nothing for it to travel through.
Exactly.
Okay, so if I strike like a steel beam,
Mm-hmm.
that sound is going to travel much faster than if I just shout across a room.
You got it.
Okay.
The denser the material, the faster sound travels.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the source material actually listed some speeds, and they were kind of blowing my mind.
Oh, yeah?
Like it said that sound travels at 920 meters per second in steel,
Wow, that's fast.
but only 330 meters per second in air.
It's a big difference.
That's crazy.
It is wild.
Almost 20 times faster in steel.
Yeah. Wow.
Pretty cool, huh?
That's amazing. Yeah. And it really shows how, the properties of that medium
Uh-huh.
dictate how that sound wave is going to behave.
Totally. And speaking of how sound travels, Have you ever noticed how sometimes you hear like a really clear echo
Oh, yeah.
and sometimes it's just like a jumbled mess?
Yeah, I've always wondered about that.
Me too. What is that all about?
Okay, so for us to hear a distinct echo,
Uh-huh.
the reflecting surface needs to be at least 17.2 meters away.
Okay.
That gives the sound wave enough time to travel to the surface, bounce back, and then reach our ears
Yeah.
as like a separate sound.
So if I'm closer than that to a wall,
Yeah.
I won't hear an echo.
You might hear some reverberation,
Okay.
which is like a mix of different reflected sounds,
Okay.
but not a clear, distinct echo.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is all tied back to the speed of sound.
Okay.
If the sound wave doesn't have enough time to make that round trip
Right.
before the next wave arrives, then all those reflections get muddled together.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the source material had this cool example. It said that if an echo returns to you in 3.5 seconds and the speed of sound is 340 meters per second, then the reflecting surface is 595 meters away. That's a long way.
That is a long way, yeah.
So that sound wave has plenty of time to travel.
Plenty of time.
Okay, so we've been talking about all these sounds that we can hear.
Yeah.
What about sounds that are beyond our hearing?
Like ultrasound.
Yeah.
Ultrasound is fascinating.
Okay.
These are sound waves with frequencies so high
Uh-huh.
that our ears just can't detect them,
Okay.
above 20,000 hertz.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just because we can't hear them, though, doesn't mean that they're not, like, doing amazing things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? The source material was talking about how ultrasound is used to create images of the heart, like echocardiography,
That's right.
and even to break up kidney stones.
Isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
How does it even work?
Right. Like, how is that even possible?
So it all comes down to those high-frequency vibrations. It's kind of like, imagine you're trying to shatter a glass with a really low-frequency sound, like a deep bass note. It's probably not going to do much.
Okay.
But if you use a high-frequency sound, like a really high-pitched note,
Okay.
those vibrations can actually build up and resonate with the glass
Okay.
and cause it to shatter.
So it's the same concept with the kidney stones?
Exactly.
Okay.
They're using those high-frequency vibrations to break apart the stones.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
That's incredible.
Yeah, so just because we can't hear it
Right.
doesn't mean it's not doing incredible things.
There's so much more to sound than what we can even hear.
Absolutely.
It's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, and we're still learning so much about it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a really exciting field.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
This has always blown my mind.
Okay.
When we see lightning and hear thunder, they happen at the same time.
Right.
But we see the lightning first.
Yes.
Why is that?
It's all about the speed. The speed of light versus the speed of sound. Light travels incredibly fast, like almost 300 million meters per second.
Okay.
Whereas sound, as we've talked about, is much slower.
So light wins the race every time.
Okay, and the source material said if there's a 10-second delay between the lightning and the thunder, that means that storm is 3.4 kilometers away.
Oh, wow.
So I can actually use that to gauge how far away a storm is.
That's right.
That's really cool.
It is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all comes down to that difference in speed.
Okay, so this is kind of a mind-blowing question.
Okay.
What happens to sound waves when there's no medium to carry them?
Ooh, like in outer space.
Yeah.
Right, where it's basically a vacuum.
Yeah.
So in space, there are almost no particles
Right.
for those sound waves to vibrate.
Right.
So there's no sound.
So all those like epic space battles in movies
Yeah.
with those roaring engines and explosions and stuff,
It's all fake.
it's all just for effect.
It's just for the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So in reality, it would be totally silent.
Eerily silent.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about.
Yeah, what would that even be like?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like almost impossible to imagine.
Yeah, it really makes you appreciate what we have here.
I know.
Yeah, being able to hear all the sounds around us.
I know.
Yeah,
It's pretty amazing.
it is.
It's like you said, it's like trying to start a fire without oxygen.
Exactly.
You need that essential element.
You need that medium for the sound waves to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
we have.
We've talked about what sound waves are, how they travel, how their speed changes in different mediums,
Right.
and even the fact that they can't travel in a vacuum.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are there any other like surprises lurking in the world of sound?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Did you know that sound can be used to levitate objects?
Wait, what?
Like,
Like make things float?
make things float in the air.
How is that even possible?
Yeah, it's called acoustic levitation.
And it involves using high-intensity sound waves to create a pressure field that can counteract gravity.
Okay, you're going to have to break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine creating a standing wave pattern with sound.
Okay.
And you have these points of high and low pressure.
Okay.
And if you position an object at just the right spot within that pressure field, the upward force from the sound waves can actually balance the downward force of gravity.
So the sound waves are holding the object up.
That's exactly what's happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like creating an invisible cushion of sound.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
To support the object.
That's right.
That sounds like science fiction.
I know it does, but it's real.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And the potential applications of this are amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Researchers are looking at using it in manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, even creating new types of displays.
Wow.
Yeah, imagine being able to manipulate objects without physically touching them.
That's incredible.
All with the power of sound.
That's so cool.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Okay, so you mentioned standing wave patterns before.
Yes.
What are those?
So imagine two waves traveling in opposite directions. And they meet.
Okay.
They interfere with each other.
Okay.
And they create this pattern where some points are always stationary.
Okay.
Those are called nodes.
Gotcha.
And other points oscillate between maximum and minimum amplitude.
Okay.
And those are called antinodes.
So in a standing wave, the wave doesn't actually look like it's moving?
Right. It looks like it's standing still.
But the energy is still there?
The energy is still there.
Okay.
And when you have a standing wave in a confined space like a tube or a room, you get these specific resonant frequencies.
Okay.
Where the waves seem to like amplify themselves.
Okay.
And that's how musical instruments work.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The source material said that the shape and size of an instrument and the material that it's made from, all that determines the resonant frequencies.
Exactly.
Which gives it its own unique sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a flute, a guitar, a drum, they all have different resonant frequencies.
Okay.
And that's why they sound different even when they're playing the same note.
So it's like each instrument has its own sonic fingerprint.
You can think of it that way.
Based on its resonant frequencies. That's fascinating.
That's pretty cool.
So speaking of sound, you know what's always blown my mind?
What's that?
The fact that whales can communicate over like vast distances underwater using sound.
Yeah, whale songs are incredible.
I know.
They use these really low frequency sounds and they can travel for hundreds, even thousands of kilometers through the ocean.
And the source material said something about how the ocean itself acts like a giant sound channel.
It does.
So the sound can travel really far with barely any loss of energy.
Right. So because of the differences in temperature and pressure, there's this layer in the ocean called the SOFAR channel, which stands for sound fixing and ranging.
Gotcha.
And the sound waves get trapped in this channel.
Okay.
And they can travel these incredible distances.
Wow.
It's like a natural sound highway.
That's so cool. It's amazing how sound can be so powerful.
Right.
But also so delicate.
Yeah.
You know, we have these intense ultrasound waves that can shatter kidney stones.
Right.
But then you have these like ethereal whale songs that can travel across entire oceans.
It's amazing.
It really speaks to the diversity of sound.
It does, yeah. And we haven't even scratched the surface of all the ways it impacts our lives.
I know.
Think about how architects use sound to design concert halls.
Right.
Or how engineers use sound to find flaws in structures.
Or doctors using sound to like hear a baby's heartbeat.
Exactly.
In the womb.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's pretty amazing.
It's used for so many things.
Yeah, it really is.
Wow. Okay, so before we wrap up, I have one last question.
All right.
This has been bugging me. We've talked about how sound travels through different mediums.
Right.
But what about when sound like encounters an obstacle?
Ooh.
What happens?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
So a few things can happen. It can be reflected, absorbed, or diffracted.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
Reflection is like an echo, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Reflection is when a sound wave bounces off a surface.
Okay.
And as we talked about earlier, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection.
So if a sound wave hits like a flat wall straight on, it'll bounce straight back.
Exactly.
But if it hits at an angle,
yeah,
it'll bounce off at that same angle.
Yeah, but in the opposite direction.
In the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. What about absorption then?
Okay, so absorption is when a sound wave's energy is dissipated by a material.
Oh, okay.
So think about soft materials like carpet curtains, acoustic panels.
Yeah.
They're designed to absorb sound, to reduce echoes and reverberation.
Which is why recording studios have all that foam on the walls.
Exactly.
Or like minimize the sound reflections.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's why a room full of people sounds less echoey than an empty room.
Oh, interesting, because our bodies are absorbing some of the sound waves.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So we've got reflection absorption. What about diffraction?
Okay, so diffraction is the bending of waves around obstacles.
Okay.
Or through openings.
Oh.
So it's why you can hear someone talking around a corner even if you can't see them.
So the waves are literally bending around the corner.
They are.
To reach my ears?
Yep, they're sneaking around that obstacle.
Whoa. And how much they bend depends on the wavelength.
That's right.
And the size of the opening.
Exactly.
Okay.
So lower frequency sounds with longer wavelengths are more likely to diffract than higher frequency sounds with shorter wavelengths.
Okay. So it's kind of like it's easier for a long wave in the ocean to bend around a rock. Yeah. And a short, choppy wave.
Exactly the same principle applies to sound waves.
Okay, cool. So that's why I might hear like the bass from a car stereo booming down the street.
Yeah.
Even if I can't hear the higher pitched sounds as clearly.
That's right, because those lower frequency bass notes are diffracting around the buildings and other obstacles.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive is mind-blowing.
I know, right?
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of sound.
It's amazing what's going on all around us.
I know.
All the time.
And who knows what other amazing discoveries are out there about sound.
It's a field that's always evolving.
Yeah.
As we come up with new technologies and understand more about physics.
It makes you realize there's always more to learn.
Always.
We take sound for granted, but it's this incredibly complex and fascinating phenomenon.
It really is.
And it shapes our world in so many ways.
Absolutely.
And I think what's so exciting about sound is that it's not just like a scientific concept. It's also an art form.
Oh, yeah.
You know, think about music.
Exactly.
It's essentially organized sound.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it can evoke emotions and tell stories.
Absolutely. And the source material talked about how different cultures around the world have developed these unique musical traditions.
I know.
With different scales, rhythms, instruments.
Incredible.
It's amazing, yeah.
It's like this testament to the power of sound to connect us.
Yeah, across cultures and time periods.
Yeah.
You know, music can go beyond language barriers.
Totally.
And evoke these universal emotions, whether it's joy or sadness or, you know, anything in between.
It's crazy how these like simple vibrations, these patterns of sound waves have such a profound impact on us.
It's really quite amazing.
And even beyond music, sound is such a vital part of our daily lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about how we use sound to communicate, to navigate.
Yeah, to learn about our surroundings.
Yeah.
Like we have this extra sense.
Totally helps us make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And as we learn more about the science of sound, we're finding even more ways to harness its power.
The source material had some really cool examples.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Like they were talking about using sound waves to create 3D images.
Yeah.
To control like the movement of tiny particles.
That's incredible.
And even to stimulate plant growth.
That's amazing.
It's crazy.
I know, it's incredible to think about what's still out there.
I know what other discoveries are waiting to be made.
Yeah, who knows what the future holds for sound.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Okay, well, I think it's safe to say that our deep dive today has only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, that's just a tiny bit.
Of this vast and fascinating subject.
It's huge.
So we covered a lot.
We did.
From the basic properties of sound waves to the mind-blowing applications of acoustic levitation.
It's wild.
I know.
Yeah.
We've learned that sound is a form of energy.
Right.
That travels as a wave. It needs a medium to travel through.
Yes.
And its speed changes depending on the density of that medium.
Exactly.
We've also explored echoes, ultrasound, and diffraction. And we even talked about the silence of outer space.
Which is kind of creepy when you think about it.
I know, it's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I hope that this deep dive has like sparked your curiosity.
Yes.
And giving you a deeper appreciation for the world of sound.
It's all around us.
It is.
Yeah.
So the next time you're listening to music or hear a bird singing or just like experience any everyday sound, take a moment to think about like what's making that possible.
Right, all those sound waves dancing around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's a great note to end on.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this sonic adventure.
My pleasure.
And until next time, keep those ears open and those minds curious.
Absolutely.
All right, see you later.
Bye. Yeah, they're looking at using it for like all sorts of things.
That's wild.
I know. It's really cool.
Okay, so you mentioned standing wave patterns before.
What are those?
So think about this. Imagine two waves traveling in opposite directions, and then they meet.
Okay.
They interfere with each other.
Okay.
And they create a pattern.
Yeah.
where some points are always stationary.
Okay.
Those are called nodes.
Okay.
And other points oscillate between maximum and minimum amplitude.
Gotcha.
Those are called antinodes.
So in a standing wave pattern, the wave doesn't look like it's moving?
Right. It looks like it's just standing still.
Yeah, but the energy's still there.
The energy's still there.
Yeah.
It's just not moving.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you have a standing wave in a confined space, like a tube or a room, you get these specific resonant frequencies
Okay.
where the waves kind of seem to amplify themselves.
Okay.
And that's how musical instruments work.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The source material said that the shape and size of an instrument
Right.
and the material that it's made from determine its resonant frequencies.
That's right. Which gives it its own unique sound.
Exactly. So like a flute, a guitar, a drum,
Right.
they all have different resonant frequencies.
Okay.
And that's why they sound different even when they're playing the same note.
So each instrument kind of has its own sonic fingerprint?
You could say that, yeah.
Based on its resonant frequencies.
That's right.
That's so cool.
That is pretty cool.
So speaking of sound, you know what's always blown my mind?
What's that?
The fact that whales can communicate over, like, vast distances underwater.
Oh, yeah.
Using sound.
Yeah, whale songs are incredible.
They are.
They use these really low frequency sounds that can travel for hundreds, even thousands of kilometers through the ocean.
It's wild.
I know, it's amazing.
And the source material mentioned that, like, the ocean itself acts as a giant sound channel.
It does.
So the sounds can travel really far with barely any loss of energy.
That's right. Because of those differences in temperature and pressure, there's this layer in the ocean called the SOFAR channel. It stands for sound fixing and ranging.
Okay.
And the sound waves get trapped in this channel.
Okay.
And they can travel these super long distances.
Like a sound highway.
Like a natural sound highway.
That's amazing.
I know. It's really cool.
It's crazy how sound can be, like, so powerful, but also so delicate.
Right.
You know, you have these intense ultrasound waves that can, like, shatter kidney stones.
Right.
But then you have these, like, ethereal whale songs that can travel across entire oceans.
It's really amazing.
It really is. It speaks to the diversity of sound.
It does. And we haven't even begun to, like, explore all the ways it impacts our lives.
I know.
Think about how architects use sound to design concert halls.
Right.
Or engineers use sound to find flaws in structures.
Or doctors using sound to, like, hear a baby's heartbeat in the womb.
Exactly. Yeah. There are so many applications.
It's incredible.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So much more to it than we realize.
Definitely.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I have one more question.
All right, shoot.
This has been bugging me.
Yeah?
We talked about how sound travels through different mediums.
Right.
But what happens when sound, like, encounters an obstacle?
Ooh.
What happens then?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
So a few things can happen. The sound can be reflected,
Okay.
absorbed,
Okay.
or diffracted.
Okay. So break those down for me.
Okay, so reflection, that's like an echo.
Right.
Right, so reflection is when a sound wave bounces off a surface.
Okay.
And like we talked about earlier, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection.
Okay, so if a sound wave hits a wall straight on,
Yeah.
it's going to bounce straight back.
Exactly.
But if it hits at an angle, it'll bounce off at that same angle.
Right. But in the opposite direction.
In the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. What about absorption?
So absorption is when a sound wave's energy is dissipated by a material.
Okay.
So think about soft materials like carpets,
Okay.
curtains, acoustic panels. Right.
They're designed to absorb sound,
Okay.
reduce echoes and reverberation.
That's why recording studios have all that foam on the walls, right?
Exactly.
To minimize the reflections.
That's right.
Okay, cool. And what about diffraction?
So diffraction is the bending of waves
Okay.
around obstacles
Uh-huh.
or through openings.
Okay.
It's why you can hear someone talking around a corner even if you can't see them.
So the waves are bending around the corner to reach my ears.
That's right.
Wow. And how much they bend depends on the wavelength.
It
It's
does.
the size of the opening.
Exactly.
Okay.
So lower frequency sounds with longer wavelengths,
Uh-huh.
they're more likely to diffract
Okay.
than higher frequency sounds with shorter wavelengths.
Okay, so it's kind of like it's easier for a long wave to bend around a rock in the ocean than a short, choppy wave.
Exactly the same principle applies to sound waves.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's why I might hear the bass from a car stereo down the street.
But I might not hear the higher pitched sounds.
That's right, because those lower frequency bass notes are diffracting around the buildings and obstacles.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, diffraction's pretty neat.
Okay, cool.
So It is pretty neat.
Yeah.
It's a good example of that.
Okay, cool. So I
Yeah.
think it's safe to say that our deep dive today has only just scratched the surface of this topic.
Oh, yeah. Just barely.
It's a vast and fascinating subject.
It really is.
Sound is so complex, but it shapes our world in so many ways.
Absolutely.
And it's so cool because it's not just a scientific concept.
Right.
It's like an art form.
It is.
Like music.
Exactly.
Music is essentially organized sound.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
And it can evoke so many emotions
Yeah.
and tell stories.
Yeah.
And the source material was talking about how different cultures around the world have developed their own musical traditions.
Yeah, with different scales, rhythms, instruments.
It's amazing.
It's a beautiful example of how sound can connect us.
Yeah, across cultures and time periods.
Exactly.
Music can go beyond language barriers.
It can.
And evoke these universal emotions.
Yeah, like you were saying, whether it's joy or sadness.
Right.
Or anything in between.
It's incredible how, like, simple vibrations can have such a profound effect on us.
Right.
Like, how is that even possible?
Well, it's because our brains are wired to respond to sound in certain ways.
Yeah.
You know, certain sounds trigger certain emotions.
It's wild.
It's amazing.
And even beyond music,
right.
sound is such a vital part of our everyday lives.
Absolutely.
Like, we use it to communicate.
Right.
To navigate.
Yeah, to learn about our surroundings.
Yeah, it's like having this extra sense.
It is.
That helps us understand the world around us.
Exactly.
And as we, like, dig deeper into the science of sound, we're finding all these new ways to use it.
Yeah.
Like, the source material had some cool examples.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Like, using sound waves to create 3D images.
Wow.
Or to, like, control the movement of tiny particles.
That's incredible.
Or even to stimulate plant growth.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really exciting to think about all the possibilities.
Or what other discoveries are waiting to be made?
Exactly. Who knows what the future holds for sound?
Okay, well, I think it's safe to say that this deep dive has given us all a lot to think about.
Yeah, I hope so.
We've learned that sound is a form of energy that travels as a wave.
Right.
That it needs a medium to travel through.
That's right.
And that its speed changes depending on the density of the medium.
Exactly.
We've talked about echoes and ultrasound and diffraction.
Yeah, some pretty wild stuff.
I know, it's really cool.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I hope that this deep dive has sparked your curiosity.
Yeah.
And given you a new appreciation for this amazing world of sound.
It's all around us.
It is.
So
the next time you listen to music or hear a bird sing or just experience any sound in your environment, just take a moment to appreciate those sound waves.
Right. Think about all the cool stuff that's happening to make that sound possible.
It's wild.
It is pretty amazing.
All right. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us on this sonic adventure.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep those ears open and those minds curious.
Absolutely.
Bye.
See ya.